Welcome to the Raising Values podcast, where the traditional family talks. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can support the Raising Values podcast through Patreon. Phil and Gillian are behind the mic, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Raising Values.
Hi.
We've both
Hello.
had a very exciting last couple of days, and we're both a little bit tired.
Yeah.
So
We're here.
not here at 10 o'clock in the morning, obviously.
No, we're not. No, that would have been really hard to do. So, but we're here, and this is really, so we go through our different topics that we put together, and so Phil's been really wanting to talk about this one, and I haven't really been shying away from it, but I had to kind of tweak some things, but I think we have a great episode for you today, and so I'm really excited for it. Just got to find the caffeine that's back there to get this one done.
You want a sip of coffee?
Not yours, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I thought we'd sit down today and talk about like really awful relationship advice that I have like seen, heard, some of which I've been given personally and very quickly, cast out. It seems like there's a lot of people out there that are looking for advice on relationships. Otherwise, there'd be no market for that advice to be out there in social media, and even coming a lot of times from professional like psychologists and relationship coaches and everything else. But frankly, I think a lot of it's just really stupid advice.
Yeah, I think as we were preparing for today's episode, we talked a lot. We talked to some friends and got their opinions on things, and so it was very good to have that back and forth with them. But just to kind of go into it, we just live in such a disposable generation now.
Yes.
Everything is thrown away. If it doesn't work, throw it away. We can get a new one. If it doesn't fit, throw it away. Whatever, if it changes, throw it away. And so we do live in a time where, well, I would say I wouldn't necessarily say like everything is abundantly available for people, because it's not. I mean, it is. It's more abundantly available than it was 50 years ago. But
I mean, here's the thing. I'm always careful how I phrase that, because like you could say that, and then out of 100 people, there's 10 who would laugh in your face and say, well, not everything's an abundant because of their individual situation. But I would say that, like, when you look at 100 years ago, think back to like 1923, you look at relative wealth, you look at like earmarks for relative comfort, you look at average lifespan. Like, you can look at all these different societal and health markers and realize that, compare violent crime then to violent crime now, make all those comparisons. We live in a time in the last 20 years of relative abundance, relative safety. We live in a time where, quite frankly, the average person's had it kind of easy. And we say this in the veteran community all the time about the fact that, yes, we've had all these wars since World War II, but World War II was the last war. You could argue Vietnam, but definitely World War II was the last war that touched as wide of a segment of America as it did. Does that make sense? Because you look at Iraq and Afghanistan and a lot of these smaller conflicts, and the percentage of the population that are veterans or families of veterans is like 1.5%. Mm-hmm. So 1.5% of the American people have shouldered that burden, whereas in World War II, it was almost all the men.
well, it was women too.
Yes.
Women.
I was referring specifically to the draft, but yeah. My point is.
But aren't we going to get to the draft?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we will. I'm sure I'm gonna upset people when it comes to the draft, but I have my opinions on it.
We'll see.
But I guess that was kind of my point. Is like, we haven't had a bubonic plague that killed 20% of the population. We haven't had a world war that killed 20% of the population. We haven't had any of those things in our generation. And I feel like we've come to a point where like we've had so much excess and so much comfort that we don't we don't value things the way we used to.
Absolutely not. No, the value of things. That's okay. So we talked. I think this was our last episode. We talked about playing the Price is Right game at the grocery store with
Yep.
Piper, and we did it again yesterday when we went to the grocery store. And the clerk, who was probably 17, was like, "Oh, you're playing the Price is Right. You're playing by the Price is Right rules or something like that." And I just kind of looked at him and was like, "Yeah, we're trying to teach her the value of $1. Like." So we put, like we said in the last episode, we put a value on how much we think is on the belt, and the closest person wins. They don't get to win anything special.
There are no prizes for this
There's
game.
no prizes, but she was really close. She's getting better and better at learning. Well, milk usually costs this much, and eggs cost this much, and she knows to look for meat. She knows, do we have
Yeah.
any meat on the belt, and what are the vegetables and the fruits look like, and
that's the thing of it, is even if she doesn't know the specific price on anything, she understands like a bag of Cheetos that's this big costs a lot less than a flat of steaks. So she's
Yeah.
she's learning
Yeah.
to draw those distinctions of certain items just cost more money. So when I see those things in the fridge or the freezer or the pantry, I know a lot of money was spent on that compared to these other items. But we also have these conversations with her about nutrition and health, so she understands the reason why we spend more money on this is because it's healthier for you than a bag of Cheetos.
isn't that backwards? The healthier food is more expensive. Doesn't that just grind your gears?
Oh, it definitely irritates the snot out of me, but I don't think it's backwards, because I mean, if you look at things strictly in a cost value sense, then the healthier things should cost more. Business person sense.
Well, okay.
If we're talking about like social correctness, then yes, the healthy
I
food
know
should
this
be
is kind of
cheaper,
like
but
going down a different road than what we had planned, but I have to wonder, and I know I could do some research, but in other countries, does the healthier food cost more for them? Like, they're not eating. A lot of countries don't eat the processed, quote unquote, food. It's not even really food. Some of this stuff is just chemicals put together. What did we say right before we got on? We were talking about dinner, and I said meat paste. Yeah, you could totally go out and buy meat paste, and it's not even meat. Now, our meat tonight will be
Yes.
actual meat from a cow, but anyway, so back to what we originally were going to talk about, because my brain is going in like 50 different directions this afternoon. See, this afternoon.
like a ping pong ball in a dryer, just ding ding ding.
If
ding,
I
ding,
just
ding,
like
ding.
lay my head down for 5 seconds on this table, I'll fall asleep, and then Phil will be talking to somebody snoring. So our first banner is bad advice, and like I said, Phil, you're kind of leading this one, and I'll kind of just segue in whenever I need to.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I talk about bad advice, a lot of things we've already talked about. Like, I think that we were talking with a friend of ours earlier today who is, I don't remember her age, and I wouldn't put her on blast, but she's close to our age.
She is. She's close
Close
to
to
our
our
age.
age. So, like, we are all in that generation that's like end of the Gen X, beginning of the millennials. And I told her, I'm like, I think our generation really screwed this whole relationship thing up badly, because it was somewhere around our generation where the thought of, if it's not easy, fun, convenient, then it needs to be discarded. You need to find something better. And that's, like, you can make that argument that applies to consumerism, it applies to cars, it applies to home electronics, it certainly applies to relationships. Because
Nowadays, yeah.
because I can't tell you, like, growing up, the relationship advice I was hearing from, like, my parents' generation was very different from what I was hearing from my peers. From my peers, it was, oh, she's a nag, get rid of her. Oh, she's this, get rid of her. The answer was always, get rid of her, find another one. Whereas the example set to me by my parents was, no, relationships are work. Like, you got to make sure that your values line up, because if not, then you're not compatible, and there's no amount of work that's going to make y'all compatible. But if y'all's values line up and the important things are there, then you're going to have to work hard to find where the rough spots need to get worn off to make the two of you fit together better.
And the rough spots don't get worn off for years in a relationship. And then you have to, there's going to be new rough spots because people do change. I'm not the same person that you married. I'm not the same person you dated. I think I've changed for the better, but a relationship is constantly changing. A relationship evolves, and you have to give it time to do that. But then you have to, when you say those vows, or even if you're not married, if you commit yourself to another person, you have to uphold that commitment. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like the biggest pinky promise you'll ever make is when you pinky promise to another person that you're going to be all these things to them and the family and all that stuff. And the pinky promise is the worst promise to break, but because we don't place value on our significant others, and we don't place value on the family anymore, and we don't place value on having a father in the home or a man in the home, and again, traditional values that are no longer present, then you're already losing. Like, if you can't go into a relationship acknowledging and knowing that those traditional roles have to be played and they have to be executed to the best of that person's ability. And if they fail, then they need to try harder and keep going. Because if they're truly compassionate and truly connected to that person and that family, then there should be nothing else. Everything else will fall into place once you've done your job there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got on a soapbox.
That's okay. That's what this is for, soapboxes.
I got on a soapbox, but I see it with friends. I see it with families and family and friends where somebody gives up. They don't want to put in the work. They don't want to polish off those new rough edges. They don't want change to happen. And when change happens, they shut down. And it's not fair to the people you have committed to the families that you have committed to, the family members that you've committed to. It's not fair. And so when those families break apart, I can't hold anyone else responsible except for the person that quit.
Yep.
That absolutely just quit. They didn't uphold their vows or whatever. They didn't uphold their promises, their pinky promise. That's, like I said, that's the worst one to break.
They stopped putting in the work.
Yeah.
Which is, like, I don't know if you characterize this as bad advice, but this is something that you and I've talked about before. Because I know a long time ago we had this moment where, like, you would ask me something along the lines of, like, why did I think all these divorce was so rampant in our culture? And I said, well, I can tell you one of the reasons is that people got it in their head you can do less work to keep your spouse than it took to get them. Yeah. Which I lay that equally at the feet of men and women. Mm-hmm. Like how many times have it will said to be joking, but I don't believe it's joking. But how many times have you heard about a group of your girlfriends say, oh, that was girlfriend behavior. I don't do that anymore because I'm married.
I don't have friends that have said that.
But you are aware that this does get said.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And on the flip side of things, I throw that down at the feet of men. When men say, oh, well, I don't date her anymore because we're married now. And it's like, no, guys. Like, whatever you were doing to capture her attention, whatever you did to woo her, whatever, and it goes for the other way too, from her to him. Whatever you were doing to make it very obvious to this person you wanted them to be a part of your life, whatever it took to get them, you don't get to stop because you're married.
Yeah.
It's not as if I'm married now I can slack off.
Well, it's like people always say, well, you're married now, so the sex is going to stop. It shouldn't. It should ramp up, if anything else,
I mean, And 50 years ago, the sex didn't start till the marriage. So.
Well, that's true. Absolutely true. But, yeah, we live in a totally different time now. But it shouldn't just apply to that. Like, you shouldn't just put in the effort for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything is going to. You should constantly be dating your spouse and your significant other, whether or not you're in I mean, we've been together for 18 years. I told you last night on the way home from, we were at a party last night with family, and I said, I really just need a date. And that doesn't mean like a date with the family. That means I need time with you by ourselves. Nice restaurant. I don't care. It could be Burger King for all I care.
You just need some hubby time.
I just need time with you by ourselves that we can talk. And our logo for the podcast has a silhouette of us on it. And we took that picture on the lakefront because that's our favorite place to go. But when Piper has after-school activities, I think we've talked about this on Raising Values, you and I would go and get a cup of coffee and go sit on the lakefront, even if it was for 30 minutes, because you have to be able to, you have to stop and take that time. Your significant other needs that one-on-one time with you more than just, I don't know, more than just 30 minutes a day, or while you're getting ready to go to bed, or, do you cuddle at night and things like, just there has to be. Oh, the other thing I want to say, sorry, I'm a ping pong ball today, is we got into a slump at one point where we wouldn't give each other a goodbye kiss in the morning, whether or not that was because you were leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning and you were scared to wake me up just to give me a kiss.
To be fair, you're kind of scary before you wake up.
I am, and usually about an hour after. But we started making sure that a kiss was given, especially since you started working from home, when we leave the house. So I kiss you goodbye. We give hugs and I love yous and have a great days. Those are things that we do. But when we come home, and sometimes you get me for this, I come home and I should give you a kiss. I should hug you and say, how was your day? And have that physical contact. We're going in a totally different direction for this.
It's okay. We'll circle back around.
Okay. But have that physical contact with my spouse, because it's so important. There was something I listened to at one point, and it was about a hug. And a quick hug really doesn't do much for the brain, but a 20-second hug, they start to see more endorphins, and the brain chemistry changes at 20 seconds. And if you hug someone, they did this in intervals. If you hug someone, I think it was for 1 minute, and you're heart to heart, you're chest to chest, you're hugging them, you're close contact, skin to skin. You have your shirts on, whatever. The chemistry in your brain almost does this cartwheel of hormones that's released, and stress levels reduce, and it's just this whole chemical and physical response to physical connection to your spouse or to someone. It doesn't have to be your spouse. It can just be to someone. Anyway, so we made it to where we both agreed that when I came home from work, we would kiss and we would hug and we would be together in that moment, even if it was just a 2-second moment. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I come in though and I forget, and like the other day you came into the bedroom and you go, I didn't get to touch your butt today. I was like, well, it's right here. I got to go cook dinner. Come on. So anyway, bad advice. We got off subject.
But to loop that back into what we were saying right before about like doing less work than it took to get them. When you and I were dating, did we ever, like when I first showed up on your front door, did you just open the door and then turn around and run off and be like, "Hey, honey, I got stuff to do," or what? No, there was more intention in that meeting. So I guess like to me, that's like one overarching bit of bad advice of you could do less work to keep than it took to get. I think that is a recipe for a downhill relationship, and a lot of this is going to be like based around marriage, but a lot of it applies to any kind of relationship.
Yeah.
And coming from me, a lot of this is going to be from a man's point of view because, sorry, that's the only one I can give y'all.
Well, thank God.
I've never been a woman,
There's
and
nothing you need to tell me.
I mean, based on 18 years of living with women, I 1 star would not recommend. I'm very happy being a man.
Oh, I thought you were saying 1 star wouldn't recommend living with
Oh
women.
no, living with a woman can be fun.
Even a prepubescent one.
Oh, that's half a star now. But I'm just saying,
Poor baby.
I am very happy to be a man. Can't think like a woman. Can't give a woman's opinion. Not going to try. I depend on my wife. For all
I
that.
appreciate that. That's for another episode, but I
That is-
appreciate that. Thank
So-
you for being a man.
So I don't want to go too far down this road because, I personally think that there's a woman version of this right behind this.
Absolutely,
But,
but you got to say it because when the audio comes
Oh
out.
yes. So
You can't see it.
the idea that men should play the field, and if anybody has ever heard this this advice is weird because on the one hand, I believe that it does work to a degree, but I don't think I don't think it's good that it works. That men should be bad boys. Like women don't respect nice guys; they respect bad boys, and I think that is true to a degree, but I don't think it should be true. So let's boil this down. There is, for a lot of years, there was this idea that if you're a man and you want to attract women, you have to fit into this mold. You have to be confident. You have to be an alpha. You have to be a bad boy. You have to be all these things to attract women. And that is, if you don't fit in this mold, you're just going to die celibate. That's just the end of it. And there was this idea that men really should play the field. Men should, quote unquote, sow their oats and all this other stuff. And I don't know that I think that's good advice. I don't think that. First of all, I don't agree with the culture of hyper casualness that we've seen. Mm-hmm. I think that it definitely cheapens physical intimacy. I think that there are emotions connected to some of those physical acts that a lot of people discount, and I think to continue to indulge with them casually over a course of years and years and years does reduce the emotional aspect of it to the point where it's been shown in studies that the number of partners you've had over your lifetime, there is a correlation between that and the divorce rate. Because you have more difficulty pair bonding with somebody. If you've had 50 or 100 partners,
Dear God.
that's not that unheard of these days.
I know it's not, but
But if
Lord have mercy.
But if you've had 50 partners, then you are less able to physically bond to number 51.
Well, yeah. Good God, I mean, I know that there are people out there that have those high numbers, but I just, I've been in a relationship where I was the other woman,
That you didn't realize.
I didn't realize how many others there were at the same time. I was totally committed. He was not committed at all. I was just another plaything for him. But it does. I think you're right. It cheapens intimacy, and I don't know. You could definitely hear people give the argument, well, we're animals and that's what animals do. But wait, I'm not finished.
I know. Go ahead, say your piece, but I'm going to veto that idea.
No, you totally should veto that idea because we're on a different level than a lion in a pride of all female. What is it? He has a harem. No, I don't know.
It's a pride.
It's a pride, yes. But he has different females that he mates with, and but we're on such a higher level of just being an animal. Yes, we are animals, but we're animals with emotion and thought and all these different things that roll into such a much more complex being on Earth. And we're I don't know. I mean, there are animals that mate for life, so to speak, but
There are, but the one thing I always throw back pretty hard at people when they try to use the human beings or animals argument is human beings are unique in the animal kingdom because while other animals have been known to self-sacrifice, it's in a very narrow window. It's like a mother will self-sacrifice to save her young, her cubs, her whatevers. But even that is not unanimous across animals. You know that there are a lot of animals in the animal kingdom that'll take that youngling and pitch it right at the predator so they can get away.
yeah.
So, like the fact that we as human beings will self-sacrifice to save our mates and our young, that in and of itself makes us unusual in the animal kingdom. But what human beings will do that no animal will do is self-sacrifice for someone that you are not genetically related to. No animal in the animal kingdom will do that. Like, there are stories from combat zones of men jumping onto hand grenades to save the rest of the squad. There are stories of men and women, like, charging into danger, risking their own life for perfect strangers because they felt an emotional connection in that moment. They felt like it was just the right thing to do. Human beings are unique in that. No other animal in the animal kingdom will self-sacrifice for anything but a genetic relative because protecting that genetic line is something that's wired into most animals.
I think there are to a certain extent. I mean, like, you think of like the baby that fell into the gorilla pen. That gorilla did put, I wouldn't say human emotions, but she did more than what a wild animal.
But the reason why that is so noteworthy is because it's the exception, not the rule.
Yes. Well, that needed to be said.
So I guess
the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that a lot of men get this really dumb boneheaded advice about how you have to be a player, you have to be a bad boy, you have to be an alpha, you have to be all these things to attract women. And my point of view is I'm like, if you have to be something you're not to attract women, you're going after the wrong women.
Okay, but when you break it down to like hormones and things like that, especially when men and women are in their prime. I mean, I love how you're like, I'm ready. I'm gonna debunk this.
My hands are on the table. I'm just like a starter in the blocks, ready to go.
So there's a documentary that I've watched where they did all these tests on men and women trying to find a match or whatever. And pheromones are a part of it. And so women are going to look for the strongest genes, and men are going to look for the strongest genes to reproduce with. Mm-hmm. And so while I disagree that men should be players and bad boys, I do think that there is a level of pheromones and hormones and things that we can't fight, because for the most part, I'm going to be attracted to someone that I feel like is going to, one, take care of the family, and two, that I can reproduce with, that's going to give me a really strong offspring.
Pay attention to what the last banner is, so don't go too far
down
there.
Okay, well, we'll stop. We'll stop for there. Sorry. That one's not, that banner doesn't really say anything. But anyway, I think that there is, when you're talking about being an alpha male and being this and that, I think that you have to think about those aspects, because especially at a certain age in a man's life, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a man.
Thank God. Never been a man either.
Never been a man. At a certain age in a man's life, their testosterone is so high, and they're so chest beaters, and I'm going to prove that I'm the alpha, blah, 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 that they can't see past being that person to attract a mate.
Alpha male, I could kind of excuse, or I could relent on that. I think the worry is that a lot of people associate alpha male with being like this dumb meathead jock, chest beater, And I don't think that chasing a caricature of what people have been told a man should be is the best recipe to attracting a woman.
I agree.
Okay.
You're okay. Anyway, we're gonna move on from that.
We're gonna move on from that one.
All right, our next banner. Women, quote unquote, don't need a man. Just threw something.
So let me start by saying
My fidget's gone.
I'm really not trying to upset anybody that identifies himself as a feminist. I have close friends and family that would identify themselves as feminists. But like every time I hear somebody trot this trope out, I just want to scream. I really do.
Explain. Why do you want
Okay.
to scream?
Because I feel like I don't want this to be a whole me dunking on feminist thing. I think that there are a lot of women out there that get told by other women, you don't need no man. Like, you can do this, you can handle your own business, you can blah, 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 blah.
I can't tell you how many times growing up that I was told that.
So what would you okay? So
Family and friends, not just like my mom or my sisters or close friends. Like, it is so ingrained into girls that you don't need no man. You don't need a man. You blah blah blah. You're a strong woman. You can do this on your own. Whatever. And every time it was said to me, there was a little part of my soul that was just kind of like, but I want a man.
and therein lies, I guess, the
And
thing.
I want a man to help me, and I want a man to, eventually a girl is going to get to a point where dad comes off the pedestal, at least in my life. My dad's kind of still, he's high up there, but
You're definitely a daddy's girl.
but a replacement of how it should be is father did what he was supposed to do during childhood, raised this adult, and now it's time to find some other man to help. I don't want to say take care of that person, but you do take care of me. I take care of you and you take care of me. But maybe take care of is not the right words that I'm looking for. Someone that's going to
Enrich.
enrich, protect, and I don't know, all sorts of things that
Partner with.
There you go.
Because I mean, and that I guess is really the thing of it, is like I have always admired the fact that you are as strong-willed and independent as you are, but I can distinctly remember this being like one of those big shifts in our relationship that we've talked
I
about.
knew you were going to say this. Like, I knew this is where you were going.
When we
That's good. Say
when
it.
we very first got together, I was emphatic about the fact that I didn't want a woman in my life who needed me. I wanted a woman who wanted me around. In other words, like, I wanted a woman who, like, and looking back on it, I don't think so much my opinion has changed. I think the way I phrase it has changed, because I want to know that if something blows up and I have to be gone for 4 or 5 or 6 days or a week or 2 weeks, like what's happened not too long ago, I want to be confident that I can tell my wife, kiss on the cheek, I love you, call me if you need me, I've got to go. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's been work when I've gotten deployed. Sometimes that's been dealing with things dealing with things for family where I've had to be out of pocket. Sometimes it's been a variety of things, but it's always been, I'm comfortable that my wife can hold the fort. She can take care of herself, take care of my daughter. No one's going to starve. The house won't burn down. Like, things will get done here without me. Now, things may not get done as if I had been here. You're probably going to be, working yourself to the bone, trying to hold up your end and my end without me. Mm-hmm. And I know that when I get back, I'm going to have some work to do, not only to kind of like catch things back up, but to reconnect with you and take the load off of you. Mm-hmm. But I never wanted a wife who I felt like, if I'm gone for 2 or 3 days, I'm going to come home, the house will be destroyed, the kid will be running around without clothes on. Like, I never wanted to come home and be like, well, nothing got done while I was gone. Because that's just extra stress for me. Like, I needed to feel like I could depend on you to hold things down if I had to go away for some reason. And I feel like I have that. But you've been very poignant about the fact that it's not that you want me around, you need me. You depend on me.
Well, that's changed. You said it's changed for you. I can remember when we were dating, just married, in that time in our lives where I would tell you, I don't need you. I want you. And in my head, and that little girl, not little girl, but that younger version of me, that sounded so good. Like, Oh my
That
God.
sounded so grown up.
It sounded
Huh?
so grown up. Yeah. I don't need you. I want you. And let me prove it to you. Blah, blah, blah. Now it's like, yeah, I freaking need you. Like, I need you home at night. I need you, I mean, within reason. I need you to be a part of this family. I need you to be a spouse to me, a part of this family, a father to Piper, a cat dad. I need you to do the things around the house that
I'm the roach killer in the family.
either I can't do or you're better at. You know, I do need you and I do want you, but now that whole mindset of I don't need you, I want you is like, what in the world was 22-year-old me saying? Yeah, I need you. It's crazy. Did you change it? No.
No, I just reordered some things so it would flow better with the conversation.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, I see what you
Because
did.
you started heading in that direction, and I want to segue to that next now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really awful advice to give young women is this idea that I totally understand that there are women out there that do not prioritize getting married, they don't prioritize having children or starting a family, their priority is themselves, their career. That's fine if that's your decision. But I am very careful to allow that advice to go unchallenged if for only the reason that, like, I hate to say it, it's not a popular sentiment, but like women have a biological clock. They're the age at which y'all can have children and carry them without complications is kind of a fixed point in time. And when you get to the back end of those years, there's the risk of childbirth goes through the ceiling. So I see a lot of women in their 20s getting this advice, and they delay starting a family. They pursue the career. Quite frankly, they chase bad boys, meatheads, and morons, and they engage in all these behaviors that when the time comes that the ticking of that biological clock starts to get really loud, all of a sudden they're like, I kind of want to marry a nice guy and have kids. But they've kind of like blown the chance at that because all the time that they could have been is building something with a nice guy, they spent chasing meatheads and morons.
I feel like you talk in absolutes a lot of time because I don't think that yes, there's a biological clock for women, but I don't believe that just because you're 40 years old or you're 50 years old that you don't have time anymore to settle down with someone and start building a life with someone. Because I was there. I wanted the career, and a lot has changed with me in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I wanted to be that person in the community that people look to. I wanted to be in the magazine. I wanted to have the write-ups and things like that. And I understood, it was very obvious that trying to pursue this type of life, this lifestyle, took away from the family. And it just wasn't, it ended up not being what I wanted. But I do believe that women, no, you don't need a man, but isn't it nice to just have a significant other? I mean, it doesn't have to be a man. It could be a woman if you're, that way or whatever, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be alone. I think I have one person in my mind that I'm thinking of that is just so staunch feminist and, it's just, she's 40 years old and she's still, I don't know if she's ever had anyone of significance in her life to really know what it's like for that. And to me, that's very sad. I think it's just lonely and sad and can be very depressing. And you don't have the person to share things with. You can't unload on anyone. And that's not to say you don't have friends, but it's just such a different relationship with your spouse or your significant other that I don't know. Like, I consider you my best friend, and I have best friends that are my girlfriends, but you're my best friend, so therefore you get dumped on. You get it all. You get the happy, the sad, the depressed, the anxious, the everything. You get it all. I don't know, because sometimes I have these like really intrusive thoughts of one of my see, I'm gonna cry again. One of my biggest fears is that you're no longer here. And like I was saying when earlier in the episode, I don't know how other people continue like to live their life and not walk through the door at the end of the day and give their husband a hug and a kiss and touch my butt when I walk through the door kind of thing. Like, I have those horrible intrusive thoughts of that may not be here one day. I'm really tired. I think that's why I'm so emotional today.
Okay.
It's been a very rocky 3 days, but
But I guess what I was getting at, and I feel like you're talking about a specific situations. I'm speaking more in generalities, but like, would you agree that the dating market does get a lot harder the older you get? Like, if you're 40,
I'm not in the dating market, but from what I can tell, yes, I think it does get a lot harder.
When you're 40, dating the pool of available 40-year-olds, I've heard it described by a friend of mine who I used to work with, who's, I could say she's in her 50s, pretty comfortably.
Okay, keep going.
Anyway, but like, she has described dating other people her age like shopping at a yard sale. Like, everything is broken, faded, or like 20 years out of fashion.
Jeez, all right.
Well,
that makes sense.
But she's, it's like she's described to me. She said, the problem is like all these people who were still single at 40 or 50 or whatever, they fall into a couple of different categories. There's a very small pool of people who are emotionally mature, good people just looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right. That's the small pool. The much larger pool is people who are broken, who've been broken by abusive relationships, been screwed over in divorces, people who are just so horribly unfunctional that they couldn't keep a stable relationship, which is why they're still single. And she said, and the problem is if you date 10 people, you're going to get 1 in the first pool and 9 in the other one. Mm-hmm. So like, I see, that's why I said I see a lot of this advice given to young women without the warning that dating in your 30s is much more difficult. Dating in your 40s is more difficult. Like, if you continue to engage in this behavior of, I don't need no man, and I'm going to casually date all these people, and I'm all the period of our lives that we spent getting to know each other and committing to each other and building this relationship, if you spend that just running around having fun, and then you go looking for Mr. Right in your 30s, the pool of available bachelors will have shrunk. Mm-hmm. So I guess my point of view is I'm like, I am perfectly okay telling young girls, you can do it. If you want a career, go get a career. But I do think it is just as important to point out to them that there are pitfalls and downsides to that decision, to defer. If your ultimate goal is eventually you want to start a family, I think that needs to be your priority. But a whole generation of young women got told you can put that off till later. Mm-hmm. So they chase the career, they chase the education, they have the fun, they do all the things. And then they get to like 35, biological clock starts getting really loud in their ear, and the next thing they know, they want a family. And guess what? Mr. Right married 15 years ago and got 3 kids running around the front yard while you were running around chasing gym bros and morons. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it does sound like an absolute, but like, I've seen women do it, and I look at them them at 40 and me at 40, and I'm like, I don't regret my decisions at all. I found one woman who was worth investing in. I made the investment. I'm happy with my decision.
Cha-ching.
Well, but then again, I was looking for Mrs. Right years before I had any business looking for Mrs. Right. Like, I had been looking for Mrs. Rabelais. It just took me a while to find you.
You were 22. That's really young.
I know.
Okay.
Well, but I guess my point is, like, I had kind of come up with that idea that, like, I'd gotten so fed up with women before I met you that I'd given up, but I'd come up with that idea of having a family, being a father, being a husband, like, those are goals. Being a millionaire is not a goal. Having a BMW is not a goal. Having a big house is not a goal. Being husband and dad, those are goals. Those are things I want. So like I knew that's what I wanted. Unfortunately, I dated a bunch of.
See what our comment is up there.
Oh, we do have a comment.
I love you. I love you, by the way.
Okay, so let me aggravate the hell out of all of the armchair feminists.
This is going to get good. We might get a Phil rant out of this.
Okay, so I used to half jokingly characterize myself as a feminist because, hang on,
Okay, I'm listening.
because, and I've told you this before, like I don't cut you slack in this marriage because you're a woman. Mm-hmm. I don't cut you slack because I don't cut you. I get visibly angry when I hear somebody make an excuse based on their gender. Like when I hear men say, "Well, I'm a man, and that's why I'm a pig, and I smack women on the butt in public," and or when I hear women like they're a complete bitch and they say, "Oh, I'm a woman. It's that time of the month," and I'm like, no. If you can expect a man to control his behavior, you can control your behavior too. Like I feel like society tries to build in all these little double standards based around gender to try to excuse poor behavior instead of saying, no, that individual just needs to own that behavior and say, I'm in a mood and I'm being a bitch, or I'm a pig and a misogynist for no justifiable reason. I just am.
So when you go around the house and you go, women.
Oh, I say that totally in jest. And you know that.
I do know that. Women.
Whammon. Not women, whammon.
Yeah. No, the whole gender equality, except when it isn't equal.
Except when it's not convenient for it to be equal.
Right. Well, that's what the banner says, and
Yeah.
you forget to read banners for our audio listeners.
That's
but,
why you're here, babe.
It kind of like, it's kind of like nails on a chalkboard for me, because I don't know. I am one of those women that believes and knows that no, there are things that I can't do because I am a woman. Like there are things that you are going to be better at because you're a man. And I have no problem with that. I am okay going, hey, muscles, I need those because mine aren't as big and I need your help. Like, I have no shame in admitting that they're just totally different. And I don't want gender. It's not that I don't want gender equality. I understand that there are so many innate differences and abilities in a male and a female, and that is why they were made that way. I guess I just don't have a problem with. I don't know. I just don't have a problem with it.
I think my gripe, and the reason I bring this up, not just in this context but in others, is it's not that I have an issue with double standards. Mm-hmm. So like when people very loudly proclaim men and women are equal, and then I say, okay, woman, go squat 500 pounds. Well, I can't do that. I'm a woman. It's like, I thought y'all were equal. Or, like, I just, to me,
Phil rant coming.
I'm trying not to. I'm holding it back because this is not a Phil rant kind of show. But like, I believe that I believe that it is appropriate and rational to acknowledge the differences between men and women, way beyond physical differences. I mean, I don't have a uterus. I'm not carrying children in childbirth. That's just not going to happen. And I am at least twice as strong as you are, much higher bone density, so on and so forth. I mean, that's basic genetic differences in our physiology. But then we get into like the mental differences between men and women. And again, this is based on
personal experience.
Well, no, I was going to say this is averages.
Okay.
So like this is not, if you know that one person out there that doesn't fit this profile, congratulations. That doesn't mean you disprove the theory. This is based on the averages because I studied this because I was interested in it. But like Women tend to be much better at multitasking. Men tend to be much better at focusing on a single task and blocking out all the other white noise. It is completely down to the way our brains are wired. Like, not on the physical level, like our brains are so different, although I think you can't. I think I've heard that you can tell the difference between male and female brain if you MRI them. But the parts are all there, but the way they communicate are totally different. Men, like, that one little change from having two X chromosomes to an X and a Y changes so much about the way our brains operate and take in information and recall it and utilize it. Men tend to be much more competitive. Women tend to be much more social. And that's something that's been born out of, that's something that's been born out of centuries of history. Men were the hunter-gatherers, we were the providers, we were the ones that went out and toiled and struggled to provide for our families, and it was usually the women, and in addition to keeping the house and watching the children, but the women were the ones who were talking and developing those cross-family relationships so that you could lean on your neighbor, which is a lot the way it is to this day. I'm an introvert, I don't go out and rub elbows with people very well, but you have a very tight little group of girlfriends, but then you have a much larger social circle. You very easily can integrate into another group of people and strike up conversations, and you do that better than I do. Infinitely better. So I guess that's kind of my point of view is I think it's really stupid advice to tell people you can do everything a man can do, or you can do. And I don't hear that the other direction as much though. I don't hear a lot of people telling men, "Oh, you don't need women. You can do everything a woman can do." Because it's no, there's some things I very obviously can't do that women can do. But I hear all this going the other direction, and it's very frustrating to me because you and I were talking about the draft right before the show, and here's the thing: I don't believe anyone should be drafted. I don't believe in compulsory military service. End discussion. Under any presidential administration, under any political regime, I don't give a damn. Nobody should be drafted. Nobody should be forced to go get shot at in a foreign land because somebody's politician needs a kickback from Halliburton. But if we're going to have a draft, women should be eligible for it too. Because why should only the men go off and die? Women fought for the right to vote. They fought for the right to own property. They fought for all these rights. But then when it comes for the right to go get your head blown off for Uncle Sam, all of a sudden it's oh, but we're women. And to me, it's hold on a second. If you only want equality when it's convenient for you, that's not equality. That's advantage. And that annoys me.
I can tell. I know.
Well, you got your fill, Rand. I hope you're happy.
No, I think it's great. It wasn't that bad of a rant. I have heard rants where literally could hear them through the walls, and I go and I tune in and I look, and Andrew's eyes are whoa, hang on, dude.
I literally turned my co-host on the other podcast into a meme because he had this look on his face.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty weird.
Because I don't even remember what I ranted about that particular time, but I remember feeling lightheaded afterwards. I thought I was having a mini stroke.
Well, you did really good on this one. I knew the rant was coming, but yeah, I agree with you. I am all for, gender equality. If you're going to ask for gender equality, then you have to pony up and face the equality of gender equality. Or you could be like me and be like, no, I'm not a man. I need a man to do certain things, and I can do certain things that you can't do, and all that stuff. So I think it's just realism. I think you just have to live in the real world. You have to get past all of the wokeness and the feminism and all the stuff that young people are just so bombarded with. You have to filter out all of that noise and look at the facts and say, I am a woman, I can do this, I can't do that. Because if you can't do that, you're lying to yourself. You're absolutely living in a lie. Anyway, I think we've kind of beat gender equality. I think we could probably do a whole show on that, but that might be something better for matter of facts.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the culture of hypergamy, what's referred to colloquially as monkey branching. So hypergamy in Webster's dictionary terms means to marry up, to date up, and it's usually in reference to someone's social or economic circle, think like Cinderella, the servant girl trying to date or marry the prince, that kind of thing.
Did.
She did. However, I think in modern times, with the culture of disposability that we were talking about, I think that there is now a culture that has developed, which I feel maybe unfairly, like women are more guilty of this than men, but I think men are very almost equally guilty of this, of constantly on the lookout to trade what you have for what you think is better. And
The
like,
grass is always greener.
yes, well, and Leonardo DiCaprio is a wonderful example of this, because like there's a meme of how he every time somebody turns around, he's dating a new 19-year-old. He's constantly trading in for a younger model, and he's not unique in that. There's a lot of men that they like them young and pretty, and they're as soon as things start to sag or the first line shows up, they pitch them out and go find a younger model. And I mean, and there's a lot of women out there that are constant, that will hold on to a husband, be a good, faithful little housewife until they think the grass is greener over there, and then they immediately take
Well,
them.
husbands do that too.
Yes, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay.
That, but I think what was once something that was frowned upon has become almost expected and even promoted. Like there was
definitely promoted for sure. I do feel like that, and not necessarily expected, but it's definitely turned a blind eye to now, and it's not expected but accepted.
Yeah, that might be a better way to put it, expected, but I do feel like it's promoted. I do think that people are told, oh, she's hotter than your girl you're with, you should dump her and get with her. Or, oh, he makes more money than my husband, my boyfriend, I'm going to jump over. And I think there's something like inherently malicious about being with a person yet trying to keep your options open. Like, I know that you've made mention to, like, when you first got together with me, you didn't want to be another number in my little black book, which was a figurative reference because I never had a little black book. But I was very quick to point out, I'm like, no, when you and I got together, the black book was gone. Like, there were no other options. There was no other prospects. It was, I've waited in line for this ride. I've got to the front of the line. I want to see how this works.
Okay.
And but I guess what I'm saying is, like, I know that there's a lot of people out there that they're always trying to keep their options open. They keep the ex-boyfriend or the ex-girlfriend's number. They keep the profile on the dating sites. And they do all this stuff because, well, what if something better comes along? And then my point of view is I'm like, why don't you make this the better thing?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the appropriate way, or the advice people should be getting, which we're going to get to here in just a minute. I don't want to go there yet.
Okay. Well, don't.
Anyway, but I feel like we have created or enabled, or we are falling victim to this culture of hypergamy, where everybody's constantly looking for the better, the richer, the prettier, the newer, the whatever. And I think there's also this inclination of, like, we all know how fun the honeymoon period is. When you first meet somebody and the endorphins and the hormones are going ballistic and the puppy dog love's there. Sometimes it only lasts till the beer goggles come off, but regardless. As soon as that starts to wear off, most people start looking for it again. It's not the relationship they
It's
crave.
the high of the relationship. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think to allow that to propagate is just a really, really bad idea, me personally. Okay, I'm getting the look that says move along.
All right, you stopped me from saying what's really important earlier, but now I don't remember what I was stopped to say.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, it's what I was. I'll start because what I was just about to say. But like, I think what's really important is that we start trying to change this conversation from one of convenience and ease, and I feel like a lot of that's rooted in laziness, to we start changing this conversation to one of, like, the benefits of not giving your heart away to every single person that comes along. I think we should start changing this conversation to the incredible responsibility, but at the same time, the incredible gift of being a husband and a father. I think, because I was telling your friend not a minute ago that husband and father they're not positions of privilege to me. You know,
Yeah.
It's an incredible responsibility. It's a responsibility that I get out of bed every morning, and even if I don't like consciously think I got to be a good husband, good father today, like that's a constant goal of mine, is to constantly work to take the best possible care of my wife and daughter that I can, to be kind, to be patient, and at times to be
Tough.
sometimes I have to be tough. Sometimes I have to be, guys, we got to knock this off. We got to get this done. Sometimes I have to put my foot down. Sometimes I have to be that to the rest of the world and be like, you're not going to behave that way to my wife and daughter, because I'm going to hurt you if you do. I think that like husband and father come with all these responsibilities, but the rewards are there. I mean, I feel blessed to be your husband. I feel blessed to be Piper's father. Like you and I, from the moment we got married, never have to try to face this world by ourselves again. We always have each other. We always have each other's back. And I know that the worst the world can dish out to me, I can come home and give you a kiss on the cheek and grab your butt. And like you are my stress relief. You are my comfort. You are what allows me to face the rest of the world and not let it eat me. And it's an emotional, like I lean on you emotionally in ways I don't know how to describe to people that are single, except to say that like whatever it is you find your comfort in, I find that comfort in my wife. Mm-hmm. And then to be a father, I've already not had my whole life, obviously. I'm 40, but like I've lived a lot of life.
Yeah,
I've gone through the stages of childhood, adolescence. I've been a combat vet. I've published a book. I've run a podcast for 7 years, and now this one. Like I've done a lot of things. I've participated in a lot of things. I've been part of a lot of things. But now I get to watch her have all these adventures all over again. And I get to help her have those adventures. Not my adventures, but hers. So like being father means you get to watch very, very closely someone else explore the world. And it's terrifying, but it's also a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So like to me, husband, and probably the same thing with wife, but husband and father, it is this incredible reward. It's a lot of responsibility. But I do feel like a lot of the advice that young men are getting today leads them further away from the life that I have with my family. It leads them to a life where they prioritize their bros and they prioritize
bros before hoes.
Well, they prioritize 5 minutes of fun rather than trying to find Mrs. Right. Mm-hmm. They prioritize, really flippant nonsense like fast cars and big houses, and they prioritize stuff rather than this lifelong connection with one other human being that nothing else can replace. And I think that much the same way I grew up, kind of understanding that the greatest goal was always find that one woman who treats you like a king and who will be there for you forever, who's in this forever with you. Have a family. Be a husband and a father. That's the goal. That was always the goal. And that was like if you were the guy who said, I don't really want to get married, I don't want kids. People would respect that opinion, but they would also kind of be like, that's kind of out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. But now there's like this whole movement, which on the one hand I hate to see, but on the other hand I almost understand, where men have gotten so fed up with they've gotten so fed up with a lot of the bad advice women have gotten and the behavior women have exhibited towards men in return that they've just quit.
Yeah.
And I find that very, very frustrating. So, to me, from a man's perspective, like those are the things that were most important to me. I wanted a woman who obviously monogamy, faithfulness, honesty, kindness and compassion, those were all super important to me because at the end of the day, like I was looking for a mother to my child. And if you were not the woman to mother my child, we didn't have a future together. So like all those same things that make you a good wife, make you a good mother. Because I don't need you to mother me. I need you to mother her. But the same things that intrinsically make you a great mother tend to make you a pretty good wife too.
Pretty good wife.
Pretty good wife.
Oh, okay.
So
No, I agree. Those same things, those same qualities that I was looking for in a future husband were also going to carry over into a future father. And kids were never. We talked about kids from probably
pretty much from the word
before
go.
you even came home from Iraq. We were talking about kids and us, not necessarily us having kids, because at that point I was still concerned about being a number in your black book. But
No, but that was one of those. That was one of those values we had to make sure that we agreed on, because we didn't want to get into a relationship and then like 2 years into be like, oh, you don't want kids? Well, I kind of want kids, and then there's something we should have figured out ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just totally agree with everything you're saying about that being the end goal of, finding someone that you can trust and someone that treats you equally, because a marriage is not 50-50. A marriage is 100-100. And I needed to make sure that I had someone to fill that position that was going to give me 100, because I was going to give 100. Now, do I give 100 every day? No, you don't either. And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes my tank is so empty, I can't give you 100. I can't give her 100, and I can't give my job 100 and this house 100. But when I think about those 4 things, because, 5 if you include friendships, the most gas that I'm going to give is to you, because you're top, like you're at the top of that pyramid, and Piper is under that pyramid, under you on that pyramid. And then everything else will find a place somewhere. And usually it's depending on that day. I mean, job is up there because job pays the bills. But, the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup or something like that.
No, that's it exactly.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, I still, to this day, like whenever nieces and nephews are getting married, or friends are getting married, we don't have a lot of friends that are getting married anymore, but it was just something that I had already always said was, you have to give 100% to this relationship. You can't, it's not 50-50, it's not 75-75, it's not even 80-80, it's 100-100. And you have to expect that from them, because they're expecting it from you, And yeah, so you did good. You met all those expectations. Pat yourself on the back. Okay.
I was thinking about, can I reach my back, but the way my shoulder feels today, I'm afraid that might end poorly.
That was a really awkward silence there.
I'm sorry. I had a whole conversation in my head right there for just a minute.
I think we're both so tired. So, I do. Are you think you're finished for this episode, or is there anything else you wanted to say? There's probably a lot more you wanted to say.
I mean, we could sit here for hours and hours.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. I think that when we're younger, we're told to prioritize certain things in a potential partner or spouse, and I think that, like, as Gil and I have gotten older, we kind of realized most of that was pretty stupid advice, and kind of came to our own conclusions about, no, these are the things that are more important. Like, the girl who can go and shake her butt in the club and look cute on the dance floor and do all that crazy stuff, like, that's far less important to me than who's going to be the best possible mother of my child.
Right.
And I would imagine from your perspective, like, some component of what you were seeking was, like, a lot of the same things I talked about, but also stability, the ability to go out and earn and provide, a person who had good prospects. This is something we didn't talk about earlier, but I think this is probably a good place to stick it in right before the end. But, like, I think what's missing from a lot of these conversations is there's the expectation of, there's the question of, what do you bring to the table right now? But what's missing is, what potential do you have? Like, you in your early 20s had the potential to be a mother, but you weren't ready to be a mother at that moment. And me in my 20s hadn't graduated college yet, But you saw potential in me and was like, okay, this guy's smart, he's hardworking, he's dedicated. Any job he gets, he busts his butt and tries to move up and do better. So you saw the potential in me. You had to have seen the potential in me to be able to provide for and support a family. But I think especially what we were talking about, that culture of hypergamy, the idea is, well, rather than invest in this person so that they can be the best version of themselves, I'm just going to like use the cheat code and go straight to the end boss. And I think that's what we've been talking about, is like a lot of bad advice people get, and that I think torpedoes relationships. I think if you see potential in a person, you need to take that into account. And that isn't to say that if a person's not what you, if there are certain personality characteristics that really don't work with you, I'm not suggesting, I can change them, I can fix them. It's like, no, they have to be trying to fix themselves. But if you do the work with them, they'll become the best version of themselves, which is
True.
what I feel like the two of us have done over 18 years of being together and 15 years married.
Yeah.
We've turned into the best versions of ourselves because of each other's effort to push us to be the best version of
That's
ourselves.
so true. Yeah.
Like, you've made me a more patient, calmer person. And in return, I've tried to plant your little feet on the ground and not let you drift away in the clouds all the time.
Yeah, that's something you used to say to me all the time. But yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a good place to end it. And I do want to hype up our next episode though, because we are going to have our first special guest on the podcast next Sunday is when we're going to record. The title of the episode is Addiction and the Family. And if you've listened to past episodes of Raising Values, you've heard me talk about my sister's story of being an addict and her recovery and things like that. And this is a topic that's so near and dear to my heart. And my sister is coming into town for the weekend, and we have made it. We're still figuring out logistics of children and everything else, but we've made it to where we're going to have my sister on for an episode of addiction and how it affects the family. And I want her to tell her story and everything that she went through as an addict. And a pre-warning is there are some rough things that she's going to talk about, all things that need to be heard. Because there are families actively dealing with active addicts in their family. There are families that have people in recovery, and they'll always be in recovery. And it's just such an important topic to me, because when you ask me who in the world are you most proud of course I'm going to say my husband and my daughter, but my sister is right there along with them at the very top. So I hope you tune in next week for that episode. It's going to be really good.
There will probably be tears.
There will probably be a lot of tears, but I think it's one that can definitely help families who are going through addiction and things like that. So.
And I'm sure the conversation is going to largely revolve around her experience, which is substance abuse. But understand that addiction is way more than just substance abuse.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what
you could be addicted to anything. There are people addicted to social media, for God's sake. So
yeah.
I mean, no matter what addiction your family is facing or struggling with, just understand that there are going to be commonalities, because the psychology of addiction, if you can separate out the body's physical response of chemical addiction from the psychological aspect of it, all addiction in the brain works the same way. Mm-hmm. It's an endorphin release, it's a hormonal release, it's a high, it's all those things. So I guess what I'm saying is just to broaden that out, if you have a family member who is suffering with some kind of addiction, it's going to be a great episode to watch.
I know, I'm excited for it. So thank you guys for watching or listening to today's episode. Thanks for, it's not our normal time. So if you tuned in today, we really appreciate it. Of course, I have to say, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those things. You know the drill. Hit the bell. That's what I hear all the time on TV. Hit the bell. Yeah.
You just refer to YouTube as TV, right?
On the TV, on the boob tube. Thank you guys. We so much appreciate you watching or listening in, and we'll see y'all next week. Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.